Hi, awesome human anatomy and physiology students. I'm going to use these slides to walk us through the basics on circulation and get into some detail about heart anatomy. So, just as an introduction, hopefully this is review for some of you, but the circulatory system is all about transport, right? It delivers a variety of things around our bodies. Oxygen and nutrients are carried by the blood, as well as wastes for removal. Hormones are dumped into the blood by glands. Platelets for repairing tissues. Immune cells for fighting infection. It also regulates your body temperature by adjusting the size of the capillaries and veins on the surface of your skin, right? There's what's called vasodilation, which when it's really hot outside, more blood flows towards the surface of your skin to cool off. And then there's a vasoconstriction, where again, the blood vessels will constrict if it's cold outside. You might notice if you wear a watch or something like that, that your wrist actually kind of gets a little smaller if you're outside in the cold, because less blood's flowing through it. On the surface, circulatory system is really simple. You have your pump, which is the heart, all the tubing that it pushes the liquid through, and the liquid itself, the blood. The heart is a hollow organ. It's about the size of your fist, and it's composed of 4 chambers. You have a left and right atrium. Think of Roman times, right? They would welcome guests into the atrium of their home. The atrium is where blood arrives. And then you have a left and right ventricle, which is, think of venting, right? You have a vent in a building, or to vent means to get things out. Blood sent out of the ventricles. You have a right and left ventricle. And I'm hoping you notice on this diagram that the right is labeled actually on the left side, and the left is labeled on the right side. I know that's confusing, but think of it as a mirror image, or that you took your heart out of your chest, flipped it around, stuck it on the paper. So keep that in mind, because it's easy to get those things confused. And I might even do that in this presentation. We can split circulation into sort of a figure 8 pattern. It doesn't actually look like this, but this is a nice simplification for it. You have your pulmonary circuit, which is from the right side of the heart to the lungs and back down. And then the systemic circuit, which is from the left side of the heart to the body and back. And so again, think of the left side as being oxygen rich, right? And the right side is being oxygen poor, even though those both contain a vein going back and then an artery going out. Don't think of arteries as only carrying oxygen rich, oxygen poor blood. It's actually not the case. You have one artery carrying oxygen rich and one artery carrying oxygen poor on each side. Here's just another kind of simple drawing. We'll do our own version of this right down here, and this is something I encourage you to do in your notebook. You might remember this from biology or from science 2. Draw a little cartoon heart and split it into 4 parts, 4 chambers, and again you've got your right atrium and your right ventricle. Note those are on the left side. Left atrium, left ventricle on the right side. I draw a pair of lungs above them, and a little stick figure on the bottom to represent the body. And then you can connect them with all the tubing. We won't label the tubing right now, but we'll get to that later. But the point is, you have a vein called the pulmonary vein going into the left atrium, left ventricle. Left ventricle goes out through what's called the aorta. It's one of your biggest arteries, to the body itself, all parts of the body, including the heart too. Blood comes back from the body into the right atrium through what's called the vena cava. Then you have a superior and inferior one that goes for your upper and lower body, right atrium, right ventricle, and then out of the right ventricle back to the lungs through what's called the pulmonary artery. And so again, this is the pulmonary circuit, and this is the systemic circuit. Again, note the left side is O2 rich, the right side is O2 poor, and you can label a couple other things as well, but kind of helpful to put down in a notebook. All right, let's get into some more detail from Hall Chapter 11.1. So, where is your heart? When you sing the national anthem, a lot of people put their hand over the right part of their chest. It's actually not where your heart is. Your heart is right in the center, pretty much. And so if you look at the ribs, they're counted 1, 2, 3, 4. What they call the base of the heart, which is actually the top, where a lot of the tubing's connected, it's right around rib 2. It's actually surprisingly close to your neck. And then the apex of the heart, the little kind of pointed tip, is down by rib 5. And if you want, take the time, you can actually try to count your ribs if you can feel them, and that would give you some rough positioning there. That's also why with the stethoscope we listen to the center of the chest to hear the heart beats. There are 4 chambers of the heart, and they're separated by doors. The doors are valves, and they're pretty self-explanatory. You have the atrioventricular valves, which literally separate the atrium from the ventricle. On the right side, we have what's called the tricuspid valve, because it has 3 parts to it. You can kind of see it here. See, there's 3 sides to it, so tricuspid. And on the other side, it's called the bicuspid valve. There's only 2 parts to it, though it's sometimes also called the mitral valve. So those are separating the atrium from the ventricle. These are responsible for that lub sound we get in heartbeats. After that are the semilunar valves, which are right here. And they are just made of three little flaps, and they are the exit points, right? The ventricle blood going outwards. And so to think of the two together, right, this is the two that are associated with the left side of the heart. Oop, left side of the heart right here. And these are associated with the right side of the heart. The pulmonary obviously sends blood out to the lungs, aortic out to the body. Okay, so you're going to be drawing a version of this and labeling it, but here is your heart and blood flowing through it. Again, I know this looks a little intimidating, but if you break it down, you'll kind of become familiar with it. So again, you can see the blood coming in through what's called the inferior and superior vena cava. Again, that just means from the upper part and lower part of your body. Remember, this is oxygen poor blood at this point because it's coming back from your body. Goes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle and then out through the pulmonary artery, which you can see immediately splits into two different directions because you have a lung on either side of the heart. Oxygen is delivered into the hemoglobin in the blood, and it comes back in right here from either side of the heart again through the pulmonary vein into the right atrium, through the bicuspid valve into the right ventricle, and then out through your aorta, and this goes to all parts of your body from here. And again, your textbook walks you through that, and you'll have to write a little summary as part of the case study that we're going to do. This is what the wall of the heart looks like, and I think this is fascinating. The heart is actually in its own little sort of fluid sac. It has what's called the pericardium, which has three layers. And so you have this outer layer, the fibrous pericardium, which is actually connected to parts of the body. And then you've got this inner layer here, which is full of liquid, and so it allows the heart to sort of beat in a frictionless environment, right? It's not like with every beat it's rubbing against something in your chest, or else we'd be generating a lot of warmth in there. So anyway, I think that's really cool. But then the meat of the heart is right here, the myocardium. This is the tough stuff. That's the muscle. That's what's actually flexing to contract the heart. And then the endocardium is kind of the inner lining that just allows blood to flow smoothly through it. There's some math you can do for heartbeat and determining how much blood gets delivered. You should be familiar with these terms. Diastolic or diastole is the relaxation of the heart, right? That's when things open up and it fill with blood. Whereas systolic or systole is the contraction. That's where your heart is pumping and making itself smaller to push blood out. And not surprisingly, our heart spends more time in diastole, right, filling up with blood, than it does with systole. It's actually 2/3 of the time. Again, a heartbeat takes about 0.8 seconds, very fast. But 2/3 of that is in diastolic, filling up the blood, and only 1/3 of that is systolic, pushing the blood out. You can also do some math with figuring out how much blood gets pumped. You have what's called your stroke volume, which is how much blood gets pushed through with each beat, and then there's the heart rate, which is just how many beats occur per minute. And so if you put those together, right, if you know the milliliters per beat and you know the beats per minute, multiply them, beats will cancel out, and you're left with milliliters per minute. And you'll do some math of that on homework. Hope this was helpful. Please read the chapter, and thanks.